Ever find yourself digging through those old gaming memories,
Mm.
past the glow of the Atari and bumping into something a little different?
Yeah.
Well, this is one of those deep dives
Okay.
where we dust off a console that dared to challenge the status quo, the Mattel Intellivision. We've got a stack of articles right here ready to uncover how this system, with all its innovation, ended up as gaming's what-if story.
You know what always struck me about the Intellivision was that Mattel, they had ambitions far beyond just selling game cartridges. They were looking ahead, really envisioning a future where your gaming console could be the heart of your home entertainment, even your home office.
So we're talking about more than just playing Space Invaders on a bigger screen, right?
Right.
This was about pushing the boundaries of what a console could actually do.
Exactly. And the cornerstone of this grand plan was the Intellivision keyboard component. Now, this wasn't just an add-on, it was their mission statement, promising to transform the console into a full-fledged home computer. Imagine using the same machine you played games on to learn French, balance your checkbook, even delve into astrology all with just a quick cartridge swap.
Wow. It's almost like they skipped right past the personal computer and went straight for the everything machine concept. But those are some pretty lofty goals for the early 80s. Were they biting off more than they could chew?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? As we'll see, that ambition was a double-edged sword. It generated excitement and attracted attention, but also set some pretty high expectations. Expectations they weren't always able to meet. In fact, things got a little complicated with the Federal Trade Commission when those promises hit a few snags.
Oh, sounds like we've got a story brewing here. A tale of ambition, innovation, and maybe a few legal hurdles along the way. But before we get to the FTC showdown, let's take a step back and appreciate the machine itself. What set the Intellivision apart when gamers got their hands on it? We talked about Mattel's grand vision for the Intellivision, but what was it like under the hood? Did the technology live up to the hype?
Oh, absolutely. This was a time when most home computers were still chugging along with 8-bit processors, but Mattel decided to take a leap into the future. They equipped the Intellivision with a powerful 16-bit processor,
Wow.
a move that set a new standard for home gaming.
So we're talking about a significant power difference compared to what else was on the market. Did that translate into a noticeable difference in the games themselves?
It certainly did. I mean, we were still in the early days of game development, but that 16-bit processor, it gave developers more power to create detailed graphics, smoother animations, and let's not forget the sound. The Intellivision boasted a 3-channel sound chip, which was practically a symphony orchestra compared to the limited sounds of its competitors.
Yeah, games must have sounded incredible compared to what people were used to. But what about the way those games actually felt to play? The controller is a huge part of the gaming experience. What did Intellivision offer in that department?
Get ready for this. The Intellivision controller featured a circular disc instead of a traditional joystick, allowing for 16 directions of movement.
Wow.
It was a bold design choice meant to offer more precision and control.
16 directions. That's a lot more nuance than a joystick could offer.
Yeah.
But was this innovation well received? I imagine some gamers had strong opinions about such a unique controller.
You're right. Opinions were definitely divided. Some players loved the precision the disc provided, especially for games that demanded careful movements, like sports simulations or maze games. But for fast-paced action games, the disc could feel a bit clunky compared to the familiar twitch response of a joystick. It became a bit of a signature for the Intellivision, a love it or hate it kind of thing.
Yeah, I can see that. Sort of like those gaming debates we have today. Controllers are almost a matter of personal preference. Speaking of unique features, I have to ask about those controller overlays. Those always fascinated me. What was the thinking behind those?
Ah, the controller overlays. They were pure genius, really. Each game came with a plastic sheet that you'd place over the controller, providing a game-specific layout with labels for all the buttons. It was a brilliant way to add a tactile, almost physical connection to the game. Instead of trying to memorize abstract button combinations, you had visual cues right at your fingertips.
It's like the tactile experience was important to them, almost like holding a dedicated controller for each game. You don't see that level of physical integration much anymore. It really speaks to their commitment to pushing the boundaries of game design. But of course, innovation doesn't always equal market dominance. Let's talk about how the Intellivision fared against its biggest competitor, the Atari. We've seen that the Intellivision wasn't afraid to take risks, both with its technology and design, but how did all this innovation translate to sales? Were they able to go toe-to-toe with the reigning champ of the home console market, Atari?
For a time, yeah, it was a real battle for living room supremacy. The early 80s saw these two titans of gaming going head to head, and their marketing campaigns, oh, they became
I
legendary.
bet those ad campaigns were something else. What kind of strategies were they using to win over gamers?
Well, picture this. Instead of going for the obvious celebrity endorsement, from a sports star or another popular figure of the time, Mattel snagged someone unexpected. George Plimpton.
George Plimpton.
Yeah.
The guy known for his witty essays and rubbing elbows with, like artists and intellectuals. That's a bold move, to say the least. What was their thinking there?
It was a stroke of brilliance, really. By bringing in Plimpton, Mattel elevated their image. His presence lent an air of sophistication, of intelligence, to the Intellvision brand, subtly suggesting that this wasn't just a toy, it was a thinking person's game console. There's this one ad where Plimpton delivers this classic line with his signature dry wit. He looks right at the camera and says, "Atari versus Intellivision. Nothing I could say would be more persuasive than what your own two eyes will tell you."
It's like they were confident enough in the product to let it speak for itself. But I imagine they weren't above using a few marketing tactics that were, let's say, a bit more about generating buzz than conveying hard facts.
You're right. They weren't afraid to get a little creative with their messaging. Remember those super graphics splashed all over their boxes and advertisements?
Vividly, that seemed to be a big selling point for them. But were those super graphics as revolutionary as their marketing made them seem?
Well, revolutionary might be a stretch. Don't get me wrong, the Intellivision did boast some impressive graphics for its time, and many of their games did feature more advanced programming and visual effects compared to the competition. But the Super Graphics campaign was more about capitalizing on consumer desire for the newest, best thing. It was a way to stand out in a crowded market and, let's be honest, put a little pressure on Atari.
A classic case of perception shaping reality, at least in the consumer's mind. It sounds like Intellivision was hitting all the right notes. Innovative technology, clever marketing, a touch of intellectual appeal. So, what led to their decline? Why isn't the Intellivision a household name today?
There were a few missteps along the way. Remember that ambitious keyboard component we talked about earlier? The one meant to turn the Intellivision into a home computer.
How could I forget? It was a huge part of their initial pitch.
The problem was that ambition ended up working against them. The keyboard component faced delay after delay, pushing back the release date and causing frustration among consumers who were, eagerly anticipating it. These delays, coupled with the high expectations Mattel had set, well, they attracted the attention of the Federal Trade Commission, who ultimately fined Mattel for false advertising.
Ouch. That's gotta sting. Those delays must have been a PR nightmare for them.
Yeah.
But surely they eventually released the keyboard component, right? Did they ever manage to salvage that project?
They did eventually release a version of it, but it was a shell of its former self. The final product was significantly cheaper, less powerful than initially promised, which disappointed those who had held out hope for the, revolutionary home computer Mattel had envisioned.
It sounds like that dream of the do-it-all entertainment and productivity center just slipped away from them. That's a tough break.
So the keyboard component was a letdown, but what about their core gaming console? Were they able to keep that momentum going? They tried to course correct with the Intellivision 2, a smaller, more affordable version of the console, but they made a decision that ultimately backfired. They introduced something called ROM lockout. Essentially, this prevented cartridges not licensed by Mattel from working on the system.
Wait, they locked out third-party developers from creating games for their console in the middle of a heated console war with Atari. That seems like a risky, even desperate move.
It was a decision that alienated many developers and gamers alike. Many developers felt betrayed by the move as they saw it as Mattel trying to monopolize the Intellivision's software library. Gamers, in turn, were frustrated by the limited game selection, especially compared to the growing library of games available for the Atari.
So it was a combination of factors. The delays and disappointments surrounding the keyboard component, the strategic misstep with the Intellivision 2 and its ROM lockout, and the constant pressure from Atari. When you put it all together, it's easy to see how the Intellivision, despite its innovation, ended up fading into the background.
Precisely. And yet, despite it all, the Intellivision still holds a special place in the hearts of many gamers. It represents a time when companies were willing to experiment, to push the boundaries of what home consoles could be. And those experimental features, the ones that might have been ahead of their time, those are the things that make it such a fascinating case study.
It's a good reminder that sometimes innovation isn't enough to guarantee success, at least not in the traditional sense. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time, with the right combination of factors working in your favor. But that doesn't mean those innovations are forgotten. So for those who remember those late-night gaming sessions with that unique controller in hand, or those who are just discovering the world of classic gaming, the Intellivision remains a testament to the power of thinking differently, of daring to dream big, even if those dreams don't always pan out the way we expect them to. And sometimes those unexpected detours, those what-ifs, are just as interesting, if not more so, than the straight paths to success. That wraps up another deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep playing.